I remember the exact moment the floor fell out from underneath me. Not in a dream. Not in some hazy, distant memory that fades around the edges. No, I remember it the way you remember fire touching skin. The way you remember the last breath before the water swallows you. It was a Wednesday. A completely ordinary Wednesday in late October, the kind of day that tricks you into believing life is simple. The leaves had just started falling from the oak tree in our front yard, and I'd been thinking about raking them before the weekend. I'd been thinking about dinner. About whether I should finally try that new recipe Marcus had found online, something with chicken and herbs, the kind of meal that makes a house smell like home. I had no idea that in less than 20 minutes, the word home would mean nothing to me. Marcus had left for work that morning the same way he always did. A kiss on my forehead. A coffee in his hand. A promise to text me at lunch. 12 years of marriage, and that man still texted me at lunch. Still called me beautiful before he left, even when my bonnet was crooked and my face was puffy from sleep. I'd watched him grab his wallet from the nightstand, slip his wedding ring onto his finger, because he always took it off to shower, always said it felt too tight when his hands were wet, and head out the door with that same easy smile he'd worn since we were 23 years old. That smile. God, that smile had fooled me for so long. My sister Denise lived just 2 houses down. That was the arrangement we'd made when Mama passed, that we'd stay close, look out for each other, be the family we'd always been even when the woman who held us together was gone. Denise was 4 years younger than me, and in so many ways, I still saw her as the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The little girl who cried when boys didn't call her back. The little girl who asked me to do her hair before prom because she trusted my hands more than any salon. I thought I knew her. I thought I knew everything about her. That Wednesday, I'd run out of phone chargers. A small thing. A nothing thing. I'd checked every drawer, every bag, every forgotten corner of the house, and come up empty. Marcus had taken his to work, and my phone was at 3%, blinking at me like a warning I didn't understand. So I did what I'd done 100 times before. I walked the short path through our shared backyard, let myself in through Denise's side door with the spare key she'd given me years ago, and headed toward her bedroom. She was supposed to be at work. Her fiancé Terrence was supposed to be at work too. The house was supposed to be empty. It wasn't. I heard it before I saw it, that low hum of voices from somewhere deep inside the house. I paused in the hallway, my hand still on the wall, and told myself it was the television. Denise always left the TV on when she was gone, said the noise made the house feel less lonely. I believed that lie for exactly 4 more steps. Her bedroom door was slightly open. I pushed it with 2 fingers, just enough to slip inside and grab the charger I knew she kept on her nightstand. And then I saw them. Not the people, not yet, but the things. The objects that didn't belong. A man's wallet, brown leather, worn at the corners the way it gets when someone's carried it for years. A wedding ring, simple gold band, the exact same ring I'd slid onto Marcus's finger on the happiest day of my life. Both sitting on my sister's nightstand like they lived there. My heart didn't break. It stopped. Just stopped. Like someone had reached inside my chest and pressed pause on everything that made me alive. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't blink. Couldn't do anything except stare at those 2 objects and try, desperately try, to make them make sense. Maybe he stopped by. Maybe he dropped something off. Maybe there was an explanation, a perfectly reasonable explanation, and I was standing here like a fool about to. The whispers came from the bathroom. Low. Intimate. The kind of voices people use when they're saying things they don't want anyone else to hear. And then, a laugh. A soft, familiar laugh that I'd heard my whole life. A laugh that used to make me smile. A laugh that now made every cell in my body turn to ice. I stepped back slowly, my sneakers silent against the carpet. I didn't make a sound. I didn't breathe. I just moved, backward, out of the room, out of the hallway, out of the house, like I was sleepwalking through someone else's nightmare. I sat in my car for 4 minutes before I could feel my hands again. And then I pulled out my phone, that dying phone that had brought me here in the first place, and typed out a message to Terrence. "You need to come here. Right now." He called me immediately, his voice tight with worry, but I didn't answer. I couldn't speak. Not yet. Instead, I typed one more message. Denise's house. The bedroom. Don't let them hear you come in. And then I waited. Terrence arrived in 11 minutes. I know because I counted every single one of them. Each minute felt like an hour. Each second felt like a lifetime of memories crashing into each other. Birthday parties where Marcus and Denise laughed too hard at inside jokes I didn't understand, family dinners where she touched his arm just a little too long, holidays where they'd disappear together to get more ice and come back 20 minutes later with barely a bag between them. Had it always been there? Had the signs been screaming at me while I stood there, deaf and blind and so painfully trusting? Terrence's car pulled up beside mine, and I watched him get out. He was a good man, quiet, steady, the kind of man who worked overtime so Denise could have the wedding of her dreams. They'd been together for 3 years, engaged for 6 months. The wedding was supposed to be in April. He walked toward my window, his brow furrowed, and I rolled it down just enough to speak. "What's going on? Are you okay? Is Denise okay?" The concern in his voice almost broke me. He had no idea. This man standing in front of me, this man who loved my sister the way I thought Marcus loved me, he had no idea that everything he believed was a lie. "Go inside," I whispered. "Through the side door. It's unlocked. Go to the bedroom." "Naomi, what?" "Just go." He stared at me for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes, and then he turned and walked toward the house. I don't know how long I sat there after he went inside. Time had stopped making sense. I heard shouting at some point, Terrence's voice, deep and shattered, rising above everything else. I heard Denise screaming his name, begging him to listen. I heard another voice too, lower, trying to calm everyone down. Marcus's voice. My husband's voice, in my sister's house, trying to explain why he was in her bathroom. I should have gone inside. I should have confronted them both. But something in me couldn't move. It was like my body knew that the moment I walked through that door, every illusion I'd built my life around would crumble to dust. And despite everything, despite what I'd seen and what I knew, some stupid, desperate part of me still wanted to believe there was another explanation. The front door slammed open. Terrence came out first, his face twisted into something I'd never seen before. Grief and rage and disbelief all tangled together. He walked past my car without looking at me, got into his own car, and drove away so fast his tires screamed against the pavement. Then Denise came running out, barefoot, her robe hanging open, mascara streaming down her face. "Terrence! Terrence, please!" She didn't even see me sitting there. And finally, Marcus. My husband walked out of my sister's house with his shirt untucked and his eyes full of something I couldn't name. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. Or the cold, calculated panic of a man who's been caught and is already figuring out his next lie. He saw me. Our eyes met through the windshield, and I watched every emotion pass across his face like clouds moving across the sun. Surprise. Denial. Realization. And then, nothing. A blank mask sliding into place. He started walking toward my car. I started the engine and drove away. I drove for 3 hours. I don't even know where I went, just roads that led to more roads, highways that stretched into the distance, places where no one knew my name or my pain. My phone had died somewhere in the first hour, and I was grateful for the silence. I didn't want to hear his excuses. I didn't want to hear her explanations. I didn't want to hear anything except the sound of my own breathing and the tires against asphalt. How long had it been going on? The question circled my mind like a vulture waiting for something to die. Months? Years? Had they been sneaking around behind my back while I cooked Sunday dinners and planned family vacations and made love to a man who was already making love to someone else? My sister. My baby sister. The girl I'd protected from bullies and heartbreak and every harsh thing the world threw at her. The girl I'd walked down the aisle at her high school graduation when Mama was too sick to stand. The girl I'd held in my arms at Mama's funeral and promised that she'd never be alone because she had me. She'd thanked me by sleeping with my husband. When I finally pulled over, it was dark. I was parked outside a gas station in some town I didn't recognize, and the only light came from the flickering sign above the pumps. I sat there for a long time, just breathing, just trying to convince my lungs that they still knew how to work. A knock on my window made me jump. An older woman stood outside, her gray hair pulled back in a bun, her eyes soft with concern. "Baby, you okay? You been sitting here a while." I wanted to tell her yes. I wanted to smile and wave and pretend everything was fine. But when I opened my mouth, all that came out was a sob, raw and broken and so loud it scared me. She didn't ask any more questions. She just opened my door, helped me out, and led me into the little convenience store attached to the gas station. She sat me down in a plastic chair, handed me a cup of water, and sat beside me without saying a word. I don't know how long I cried. But she stayed the whole time. "Whatever it is," she finally said, her voice gentle, "you're going to get through it. I don't know what happened, and you don't have to tell me. But I can see you've got a strong spirit, child. Life's about to test at something fierce. But you're going to pass. You hear me? You're going to pass." I didn't believe her then. But I never forgot what she said. I went home the next morning. Not because I was ready, I wasn't sure I'd ever be ready, but because running wasn't going to change what happened. And somewhere beneath the grief and rage, there was something else. A need to understand. A need to look into the eyes of the two people who'd betrayed me and ask the only question that mattered. Why? Marcus's car was in the driveway when I pulled up. I sat there for a moment, gathering whatever scraps of courage I had left, and then I walked inside. He was sitting at the kitchen table, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. His eyes were red, his jaw tight. When he saw me, he stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. "Naomi. Thank God. I've been calling you all night. I didn't know where you were. I thought." "You thought what?" My voice was calm. Terrifyingly calm. That I'd driven off a bridge? That I'd hurt myself? That finding my husband in my sister's bedroom would break me? Please. Please, let me explain. Explain what, Marcus? I walked closer, my eyes never leaving his face. Explain why your wallet was on her nightstand? Explain why your wedding ring, the ring I put on your finger, was sitting next to her lotion and her perfume? Explain why I could hear you whispering to her in the bathroom like you've done it 100 times before? He flinched. Actually flinched. And in that moment, I knew there was no explanation. There was no misunderstanding. There was only the ugly, unforgivable truth. "How long?" I asked. He didn't answer. "How long, Marcus?" His silence stretched on until it became its own kind of confession. And when he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. 2 years. 2 years. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually staggered backward, my hand reaching for the counter to steady myself. 2 years meant every anniversary, every birthday, every Christmas morning where we'd exchanged gifts with Denise and Terrence. 2 years meant every time she'd hugged me and told me she loved me. 2 years meant the dress fitting where she'd helped me pick out a gown for their engagement party, where she'd told me I was beautiful, where she'd looked me in the eyes and smiled. 2 years of lies. 2 years of betrayal. 2 years of my life built on a foundation that never existed. Why her? I managed to ask. Of all the people in the world, why my sister? He shook his head, his eyes filling with tears. I don't know. It just happened. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. It wasn't supposed to. Supposed to what? Last this long? Get caught? Destroy everything? I love you, Naomi. I swear to God, I love you. Don't. My voice cracked for the first time. Don't you dare say that word to me. You don't know what love is. If you did, you would have walked away from her the first time she touched you. You would have thought about everything we built together. 12 years, Marcus. 12 years, and you would have said no. I tried. You didn't try hard enough. The sound of the front door opening made us both turn. And there she was, Denise, standing in the doorway like she had any right to be in my home. Her eyes were swollen, her face bare, her whole body trembling. She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, a twisted combination of shame and desperation and something that almost looked like relief. Naomi, please. Get out. I need to explain. I said, get out of my house. She took a step closer, her hands raised like she was approaching a wounded animal. I know you hate me. You have every right to hate me. But please, please let me tell you how sorry I am. Please let me, sorry? The word came out like a laugh, sharp and bitter. You're sorry? You've been sleeping with my husband for 2 years, and you're sorry? You've been looking me in my face, calling me your sister, telling me you love me, and now you want to apologize? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I never meant for it to happen. I swear, Naomi, I never planned this. It just... Don't give me that. Don't you dare stand in my house and tell me it just happened. Nothing just happens for 2 years. You made a choice. Every single time you saw him, you made a choice. Every single time you lied to me, you made a choice. And every single time you smiled at Terrence like he was your future, you made a choice. So don't tell me it just happened. Tell me the truth. She was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. I was jealous, okay? I was jealous of everything you had. You had Mama's love, you had Marcus, you had this perfect life, and I had nothing. I was always second best. Always standing in your shadow. And when Marcus started paying attention to me, when he made me feel special, I didn't want it to stop. I stared at her, this stranger who wore my sister's face. And for the first time in my life, I saw her clearly. Mama loved you, I said quietly. I loved you. I gave you everything I had. Every piece of me that was worth something, I gave to you. And this is how you repay me? She had no answer. Neither did Marcus. I looked between them, these two people I thought I knew better than anyone in the world, and I felt something shift inside me. Not anger anymore. Not even grief. Just a cold, hollow emptiness where my heart used to be. I want you both out of this house, I said. I want you out of my life. I want you to forget my name, forget my face, and forget that I ever existed. Because as far as I'm concerned, you're both already dead to me. The weeks that followed were the darkest of my life. I filed for divorce on a Friday morning, the papers heavy in my hands. I sat in the lawyer's office and signed my name next to Marcus's, ending 12 years of marriage with a few strokes of ink. It felt anticlimactic. It felt surreal. It felt like I was watching someone else's life fall apart from very far away. I stopped speaking to Denise entirely. She tried, God, did she try, showing up at my door, leaving voicemails, sending letters that I burned without reading. She even had the nerve to send flowers to my job, a massive arrangement of white roses with a card that said I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I threw them in the trash in front of everyone. My coworkers didn't know the details, but they knew something was wrong. They'd seen me go from the woman who smiled at everyone to the woman who barely spoke. They'd seen me lose weight, lose sleep, lose that spark that used to live behind my eyes. They were kind about it, offering to cover my shifts, bringing me food I couldn't eat, pretending not to notice when I cried in the bathroom. But kindness couldn't fix what was broken. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the memories. Everywhere I looked, I saw them, ghosts of happy moments that had been poisoned by lies. The couch where Marcus and I had watched movies. The kitchen where Denise and I had baked Mama's pound cake together. The backyard where we'd had cookouts, all four of us laughing like we were the happiest family in the world. It had all been a performance. A show put on for an audience of one. Terrence called me about 3 weeks after everything fell apart. His voice sounded hollow, emptied out, like someone had scraped away everything that used to make him him. "I just wanted to check on you," he said. "And to say I'm sorry." "You didn't do anything wrong," I told him. "You don't owe me an apology." "I know. But I feel like I should have seen it. I should have known." "Neither of us knew. That's not our fault." There was a long pause on the line. And then he said something I'll never forget. "I was going to marry her, Naomi. I was going to spend the rest of my life with her. I had it all planned out, the house, the kids, growing old together. And now it's just gone. Like it never existed." I understood exactly what he meant. Because I'd felt the same thing. "They took more than our trust," I said. "They took our futures. The ones we thought we were building. And we'll never get that back." "No," he agreed. "We won't." We talked for almost 2 hours that night, two strangers bound together by the same wound. By the time we hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks, a tiny flicker of something that might have been hope. I wasn't alone. Someone else understood. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to keep going. 3 months after I found them, I finally broke. It happened at a grocery store, of all places. I was standing in the cereal aisle, staring at a box of Frosted Flakes, Marcus's favorite, when something inside me just shattered. All the grief I'd been holding back, all the rage I'd been swallowing, all the tears I'd refused to cry in front of anyone, it all came flooding out at once. I sank to the floor right there in the middle of the aisle, surrounded by strangers, and I wept like a child. Big, ugly, heaving sobs that I couldn't control. A store employee rushed over, asking if I was okay, but I couldn't answer. I couldn't do anything except cry. That's when I knew I needed help. I started therapy the following week. My therapist's name was Dr. Patricia Williams, a black woman in her 60s with silver locks and the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. She didn't judge me. She didn't rush me. She just sat with me in my pain and helped me understand that grief wasn't linear. "You're not just mourning a marriage," she told me during one session. "You're mourning a sisterhood. You're mourning your mother's memory. You're mourning the life you thought you were going to have. That's not weakness, Naomi. That's humanity." She was right. I had been trying to be strong for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to be human. I'd been holding myself together with willpower and spite, refusing to let anyone see me crack. But the truth was, I was already cracked. I'd been cracked since the moment I walked into that bedroom. I just hadn't let myself feel it. Therapy taught me that it was okay to fall apart. That sometimes falling apart was the only way to put yourself back together. That the strongest thing I could do wasn't pretend to be fine, it was admit that I wasn't. And slowly, painfully, I started to heal. 6 months after everything fell apart, my doorbell rang on a Saturday afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone. I'd spent the morning cleaning, trying to make my house feel less like a mausoleum and more like a home. I'd even opened the curtains for the first time in weeks, letting sunlight pour into rooms that had been dark for too long. When I opened the door, I found a woman I'd never seen before. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with beautiful dark skin, natural hair pulled back in a puff, and eyes that held a sadness I recognized immediately. "Are you Naomi Jackson?" she asked. "Yes." She took a deep breath, like she was steeling herself for something difficult. "My name is Jade. And I think you need to hear what I have to say." I should have closed the door. I should have told her I wasn't interested in whatever she was selling or whatever drama she was bringing. But something in her eyes stopped me. "Come in," I heard myself say. We sat in my living room, two strangers facing each other, and Jade told me a story that made everything I thought I knew even worse. "I used to work at Marcus's company," she said. "In the marketing department. About 4 years ago, he started noticing me, complimenting me, finding reasons to be alone with me. At first I thought I was imagining things. He was married, after all. And he talked about you all the time, about how much he loved you, how lucky he was." My stomach turned to ice. But then the comments became more personal. The touches lingered too long. And one night, after an office party, he tried to kiss me. She looked down at her hands, her voice wavering. I pushed him away. Told him it was inappropriate. And the next day, he acted like nothing had happened. But I knew what I'd seen. I knew who he really was. "Why are you telling me this?" I whispered. "Because I quit that job to get away from him. Because I've spent 4 years feeling like I should have said something, but I was too scared. And when I heard through the grapevine what happened with you and your sister," she stopped, her eyes filling with tears. "I couldn't stay silent anymore. You deserve to know that this wasn't your fault. That he's been this way for years. That there might be others. Others." The word echoed in my head, opening up possibilities I hadn't considered. If he'd tried with Jade 4 years ago, before he started with Denise, how many more had there been? How many more women had he charmed, manipulated, deceived? "I'm so sorry," Jade said. "I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. But I thought." "Thank you," I interrupted. My voice was surprisingly steady. "Thank you for telling me." She looked surprised. "You're not angry?" "Not at you." I looked at her, this brave young woman who had carried guilt that wasn't hers for 4 long years, and I felt something shift inside me. "You did the right thing by walking away. And you did the right thing by coming here. I needed to hear this. More than you know." After Jade left, I sat in the silence of my living room and let the truth wash over me. Marcus hadn't just betrayed me with my sister. He'd been betraying me, or trying to, for years. The affair with Denise wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a pattern. A choice he made over and over, with anyone he thought he could get away with. And for the first time since I'd found that wallet on my sister's nightstand, I stopped asking what was wrong with me. Because there was nothing wrong with me. The problem had always been him. Over the next few months, something strange happened. Terrence and I became friends. It started small, a text here, a phone call there, 2 people checking in on each other because no one else understood what we were going through. But gradually, it grew into something deeper. Something I hadn't expected and wasn't sure I deserved. We met for coffee one rainy afternoon, sitting across from each other in a little cafe downtown. It was the first time we'd seen each other since that terrible day, and there was an awkwardness at first, the awkwardness of 2 people who'd been connected by marriage and were now connected only by pain. "You look good," he said. "Healthier." "Therapy," I admitted. "And sleep." "Finally." He smiled, and for a moment, I saw the man he used to be, the man who'd loved my sister, the man who'd trusted her the way I'd trusted Marcus. "I'm glad. You deserve to be okay, Naomi. So do you." We talked for 3 hours that day. About everything and nothing. About the people we used to be and the people we were becoming. About the dreams we'd lost and the dreams we were slowly starting to rebuild. Terrence had started his own business, a landscaping company he'd always wanted to launch but never had the courage to. I figured, if I'm going to start over, I might as well start over completely, he said. Do something I actually love for once. That's brave, I told him. And I meant it. What about you? He asked. Any plans? I thought about it for a moment. I've been thinking about writing, I admitted. I used to write all the time when I was younger. Poetry, stories, whatever. But life got busy, and I stopped. Maybe it's time to start again. You should, he said. You've got a lot to say. And I think people need to hear it. I looked at this man, this kind, broken, beautiful man who had every reason to be bitter and angry but somehow wasn't, and I felt grateful. Grateful that we'd found each other. Grateful that pain could bring people together as easily as it tore them apart. Thank you, I said. For being here. For understanding. For not giving up. Thank you too, he replied. I don't think I would have made it this far without you. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't before. Healing didn't have to be lonely. Sometimes the people who saved you were the ones you never expected. Sometimes the most beautiful things grew from the ugliest soil. A year after I found Marcus and Denise together, a letter arrived. It was from Denise, handwritten on lavender paper, her familiar loopy script covering page after page. I almost threw it away without reading it. But something stopped me. Call it curiosity. Call it closure. Call it the last remnants of the love I'd once had for my little sister. I sat on my porch, the evening sun warm on my face, and I read. Dear Naomi, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to read this. But I had to write it anyway, because I can't keep carrying this inside me anymore. What I did to you was unforgivable. I know that. I've known it every single day for the past year, and I'll know it every single day for the rest of my life. I took the one person in this world who always loved me unconditionally, and I destroyed her. I destroyed us. I've been in therapy. Not because I want pity or because I'm trying to justify what I did, but because I needed to understand how I became someone capable of this. And what I've learned is ugly, Naomi. Really ugly. I've learned that I've been jealous of you my whole life. Not because you had more than me, but because you were more than me. You were Mama's favorite. You were the strong one, the smart one, the one who had everything together. And I was just your little sister. The afterthought. That's not your fault. It was never your fault. But I made it your problem. I punished you for being everything I wanted to be, and I did it in the most horrible way possible. Marcus approached me first. That's not an excuse. I could have said no, and I should have said no, but I want you to know that I didn't pursue him. He found me at a low point. Terrence and I were fighting all the time, and I was lonely, and Marcus made me feel seen. Wanted. Special. And instead of recognizing that for the manipulation it was, I fell right into it. I hate myself for what I did. I hate the person I became. And I hate that I can't undo it, no matter how much I wish I could. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I'm asking you to know that I love you. I've always loved you. And losing you has been the worst punishment I could ever imagine. If there's ever a day, even a single moment, when you want to reach out, I'll be here. I'll always be here. Your sister, Denise. I read the letter 3 times. And each time, I felt something different. The first time, I felt anger. How dare she write to me? How dare she try to explain herself? How dare she use words like love after what she'd done? The second time, I felt sadness. Sadness for the sister I'd lost. Sadness for the family we used to be. Sadness for all the years we couldn't get back. And the third time, I felt something unexpected. Understanding. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but understanding. I could see, finally, how broken Denise had been. How her jealousy had eaten away at her for years, until it consumed everything good inside her. How she'd mistaken Marcus's attention for love when really it was just manipulation by a man who preyed on vulnerability. It didn't excuse what she'd done. Nothing could excuse that. But it helped me see her not as a villain, but as a tragedy. A woman who'd had everything she needed right in front of her and still reached for something poisonous because she didn't believe she deserved the good things. I didn't write back. I wasn't ready for that. But I didn't burn the letter either. I folded it carefully, placed it in a drawer, and left it there. A reminder that healing wasn't a destination but a journey. And maybe, just maybe, there would come a day when I could take another step. 18 months after the discovery, I found out something that changed everything. I was at a routine doctor's appointment, just a checkup, nothing special, when my doctor looked at my chart and frowned. "Naomi, your records show that you underwent a tubal ligation procedure about 2 years ago. Is that correct?" I stared at her. "What?" She turned the chart toward me, pointing to an entry I'd never seen before. "This says you had a bilateral tubal ligation at Memorial Hospital. You didn't request a copy of these records?" My blood ran cold. I never had that procedure. I've never had any surgery. The doctor's face went pale. "I'm going to need to look into this." It took 3 weeks and multiple calls to Memorial Hospital before the truth came out. The procedure had been performed under my name. My insurance had been billed. My medical records had been updated. But I had never been in that hospital. I had never signed those consent forms. I had never agreed to anything. Marcus had forged my signature. My husband, my ex-husband, the man I'd loved for over a decade, had secretly had me sterilized without my knowledge or consent. When the detective explained it to me, I couldn't even process what I was hearing. Apparently, Marcus had convinced a doctor that I was struggling with mental health issues and that this was a decision we'd made together. He'd forged my signature on the paperwork. He'd handled everything. And he'd done it 2 years ago, right around the time his affair with Denise began. He'd taken away my choice to have children without even telling me. I pressed charges. Of course I did. What he'd done wasn't just wrong, it was criminal. The case went to trial 6 months later, and Marcus was convicted of medical fraud, forgery, and assault. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. But the verdict didn't give me back what he'd stolen. It couldn't give me back the children I'd dreamed of having. It couldn't give me back the years I'd spent trusting a man who'd violated me in the most intimate way possible. It did, however, give me something else. Closure. For the first time since this nightmare began, I understood the full scope of who Marcus really was. Not just a cheater. Not just a liar. But a predator. A man who controlled, manipulated, and destroyed anyone who got too close. And I'd survived him. That meant something. 3 years after I found my husband's wallet on my sister's nightstand, I finally felt like myself again. Not the old Naomi, she was gone forever, buried beneath the weight of everything she'd lost. But a new Naomi. A stronger Naomi. A woman who'd walked through fire and come out the other side scarred but still standing. I'd started writing, just like Terrence suggested. At first it was just journaling, pages and pages of pain poured onto paper, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. But gradually, my journals turned into essays. My essays turned into stories. My stories turned into something bigger. I wrote a book. A memoir about betrayal and survival and the long, winding road to healing. I poured everything into it, every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt and despair. and when it was finished, I sent it out into the world with trembling hands and a prayer. It got published. The day I held my book in my hands for the first time, I cried. Not from sadness this time, but from something else. Pride, maybe. Or gratitude. Or the simple, overwhelming joy of having transformed my pain into something meaningful. The book did well. Better than well, actually. It hit the bestseller list. It resonated with thousands of women who'd experienced similar betrayals. I got letters from readers telling me my story had saved their lives, given them courage, helped them see that they weren't alone. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like my suffering had purpose. For years after the betrayal, Denise and I finally spoke again. It happened at Mama's grave, on the anniversary of her death. We'd both come separately, not knowing the other would be there, and we found ourselves standing on opposite sides of the headstone, two strangers who used to be sisters. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. We just stood there, staring at Mama's name carved in stone, remembering the woman who'd raised us to love each other. She'd be so disappointed in me, Denise finally whispered. If she could see what I did. She'd be disappointed in both of us, I replied. Me for cutting you off. You for what you did. She didn't raise us to be enemies. Denise looked at me, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Naomi. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't even begin to make up for. I know. I took a deep breath. I read your letter. A long time ago. And I've been carrying it with me ever since. You kept it? I kept it. I met her eyes, my sister's eyes, so much like Mama's, and I felt something crack open inside me. Something that had been closed for 4 years. I'm not ready to forgive you, Denise. I don't know if I ever will be. But I'm ready to stop hating you. Because holding on to that hate, it's been poisoning me. And I'm tired of letting what happened define who I am. She nodded, wiping her tears. That's more than I deserve. Maybe. But it's what I need. We stood there for a while longer, two broken women trying to find their way back to something that resembled family. We didn't hug. We didn't make plans to see each other. But we didn't walk away either. It was a beginning. Just the tiniest first step on a road that might take years to walk. But it was something. And sometimes, something is enough. 5 years after my world fell apart, I got married again. Not to just anyone, to Terrence. It took us a long time to get there. Years of friendship, of rebuilding trust, of learning to believe in love again despite everything we'd been through. There were moments when we both almost walked away, convinced we were too damaged for anything real. But something kept pulling us back together. Maybe it was the shared trauma. Maybe it was the way we understood each other without needing words. Maybe it was simply fate, bringing two people together who needed exactly what the other had to give. Our wedding was small, just 30 people in a garden, surrounded by flowers and friends and a future we'd built from nothing. I wore a simple white dress, and Terrence wore a gray suit, and when he looked at me walking down the aisle, I saw something in his eyes I thought I'd never see again. Hope. We wrote our own vows. Mine were simple. I spent years believing that love was supposed to hurt, I said. That trust was just another word for vulnerability, and vulnerability was just another word for pain. But you taught me different. You taught me that real love doesn't destroy, it rebuilds. It doesn't take, it gives. And it doesn't ask you to be less than you are. It asks you to become everything you can be. You've seen me at my worst, Terrence. You've seen me broken and angry and so full of grief I couldn't breathe. And you stayed. Not because you had to, but because you saw something in me worth staying for. Today, I promise to do the same for you. For as long as we both shall live. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, I didn't just feel like I was starting a new chapter. I felt like I was finally closing the old one. 10 years later, I'm writing this from the porch of the house Terrence and I built together. It's a beautiful house, not too big, not too small, with a garden in the back that Terrence tends every morning and a writing studio where I work on my third book. We never had biological children, Marcus made sure of that, but we adopted two amazing kids, Jalen and Maya, who have filled our lives with more love and chaos and laughter than I ever thought possible. Denise and I talk now. Not often, and not without effort, but we talk. She's remarried too, to a quiet man named David who seems to genuinely love her. She sends birthday cards to my kids. I send holiday gifts to hers. It's not the relationship we used to have, and it never will be. But it's something. A bridge we're building, one plank at a time. Marcus got out of prison a few years ago. I don't know where he is now, and I don't care to find out. Some chapters are meant to stay closed. When I think about everything that happened, the betrayal, the pain, the years I spent rebuilding my life from the ground up, I don't feel bitter anymore. I feel grateful. Not for the trauma itself, but for what it taught me. It taught me that I'm stronger than I ever knew. That I'm capable of surviving things I never imagined I'd face. And that the worst moments of our lives don't have to define us. They can refine us instead. I'm not the woman I was before that Wednesday in October. That woman was naive, trusting, convinced that love was something that couldn't be broken. The woman I am now knows better. She knows that love can shatter into 1,000 pieces. But she also knows that those pieces can be gathered up and reassembled into something new. Something different. Something that, in its own way, is even more beautiful than before. If you're reading this because you've experienced your own betrayal, your own moment where the floor fell out from underneath you, I want you to know something. You're going to be okay. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not for a long time. But eventually, the pain will fade. The wounds will heal. And you'll find yourself standing on the other side, looking back at everything you survived, and you'll realize that you're not just okay. You're extraordinary. Because anyone who walks through fire and comes out the other side breathing is nothing short of miraculous. The people who hurt you don't get to write the end of your story. You do. And you can write it any way you want. So write yourself a happy ending. Write yourself a new beginning. Write yourself the life you deserve, the love you're worthy of, the future you've always dreamed of. It's yours. All of it. Waiting for you on the other side of the pain. You just have to keep walking toward it. One step at a time. I still have Marcus's wedding ring. Not because I want to remember him, but because I want to remember what I survived. I keep it in a small box at the back of my closet, buried beneath old photos and forgotten keepsakes. Sometimes, when I'm feeling lost or overwhelmed or like the world is too heavy, I take it out and hold it in my palm. It's just a circle of gold. Just a symbol of a promise that was broken long before I knew it. But it's also a reminder. A reminder that I walked into my sister's room one ordinary Wednesday and discovered an extraordinary betrayal. A reminder that I lost everything I thought I knew and still managed to find something better. A reminder that the woman I became is stronger, braver, and more resilient than the woman I used to be. And when I put that ring back in its box and close the lid, I feel peace. Not because the past didn't hurt. It did. But because the past is over. And my future, my beautiful, unexpected, hard-won future, is just beginning. So I ask you, as I close this chapter of my story, if you found something in your life that shattered everything you believed, would you let it destroy you? Or would you let it rebuild you into something stronger? The choice, in the end, is always yours.